Hello, everyone. So it's been a fantastic couple of days. If you're anything like me, my head is about to explode with all the amazing conversations, new knowledge, things I want to check out when I get home. It's pretty awesome, right? This community is amazing. So thank you, first off, for coming along and being part of this amazing community. I am privileged to wrap up the day with a bit of a summary of learnings and where we're going to go in the future. We'll look at a bit of Kubernetes stuff. We'll look at a bit of general platform stuff, organizational stuff too. But without further ado, to introduce the panelists, you'd like to introduce yourself, Chris, and we'll walk down.
Yeah, I'm Chris Plank from NatWest Bank.
Hi, I'm Cheryl from ARM.
Sarah from Sarah Wells Consulting.
Fantastic.
I'm an independent consultant. I used to work at the Financial Times.
Great.
Do you have a book?
And I have a book, yes.
We'll all be shilling our books. Thank you, everyone. Fantastic. So I'll start with saying, like, what has been one of the most interesting things you've learned or heard or chatted about over the couple of days? And Sarah, I'll start with you if that's all right, and we'll work down through.
So I'm not totally immersed in the Kubernetes community, so it's been fascinating. There's actually so much stuff that I want to go away and look up. It is a little bit overwhelming. What I really took away from it was just how many different things are being done and how enthusiastic everybody is. It's been a very welcoming community and really interesting talks.
Love it. Cheryl, what about yourself? You've been a long-time member of the CNCF community and KubeCons, and I've seen you many times at KubeCons, right?
I guess I've been kicking around for a little while. I think for me, the most kind of fun thing, honestly, is hearing like people getting into the community and their story of like how they went from being inside their own org to like contributing back to the community and getting involved with all the groups and getting involved with the events and stuff. Like, I really love that. I really love when people put themselves out there and realize like there's so much you can do when you do it with a community. That for me has been really fun.
100%. That was a stand-up moment for me, so hat tip to you, Chris. That was very well done.
Thank you.
And what was your biggest sort of takeaway the last couple of days? I'm sure you've got many, but...
Yeah, do you know, I'm really interested in the sustainability side of things, right? You know, coming from Scotland, you know, wind capital of the world, right? And we've got Tidal, you know, we kind of championed that in Dundee and built one of the first ones. I also had Microsoft sinking their submersible data center and things like that. So, you know, Nick Jones's talk, I was really interested in the sustainability side of that. They've got a data center in Norway. Norway's very similar to Scotland. Why are all the data centers located in London? Why are they, bringing the power down from generated in Scotland down here rather than actually moving the data centers up there where it's colder? We've got more water, just like Norway, right? You know, why is people not asking questions about that? I just started going through my head today.
I love it. And we had like Sarah's amazing keynote this morning, making us think a bit more about green computing.
Well, that's what got me started thinking about it this morning, right? And just thinking about, are we missing a trick? Are we putting things in really congested areas that get really hot and we're running lots of electricity, that we're piping from up north down south and just building data centers on top rather than below? There's a lot of things we could learn from other countries. And why are the CSPs and others not doing it? And then Nick talked, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're building a data centre in a very cool place like Scotland with hydro. You know, we've got lots of hydro in Perthshire, right? But we've got no data centres like that. So, yeah, it's really interesting.
That's an interesting thinking point, Chris. Right? Yeah, no, I love that. Fantastic. Thank you very much. And it's somewhat related to this, actually, Chris, and perhaps I'll throw it back to you. What do you think the biggest challenges the community faces in the platform and the cloud-native space at the moment?
Time. It's always time. The thing that I've found, I joined the bank again last May. The pace is different from what I've seen elsewhere because it's a larger org, right? And I think in the community, things are evolving so fast. Carving out time, whether that's for training, whether that's for doing something, you're underestimating the amount of time now because things are moving on so fast. And like you said, the amount of things that we've heard about today, that we're going to have to go away after this and research and learn more about those, right? It's carving out that time. And for some of us, it's only like 3 weeks and then we're away to Salt Lake City and there's even more of that. So it's carving out that time. So it'll be Christmas for me.
That's a good point. Yeah. Cheryl, what's your thoughts on that?
I guess time as well, but actually from a slightly different direction. Because now I work for ARM. Right? ARM is primarily a hardware company. And the pace of work at ARM is totally different because primarily ARM licenses IP. It doesn't do the manufacturing. So from a new architecture to someone in this room getting their hands on it is 9 years. And that means, we have timelines of like 2027, thing's going to land. So I've had to like really rethink of like, what is fast and what is slow? Now like a month to do things feels really fast. But I do agree in terms of like, there is still a massive challenge of complexity. The complexity never ends. The number of trade-offs that you have to make never ends. So I think that will continue to be something that we're talking about forever and ever and ever in this space.
Yeah, I like it. Sarah, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking that I'm a big fan of platform engineering, but I actually think there's something wrong about the fact that every organization has to have a platform engineering team. Because 10 years ago, well, maybe not 10 years ago, but you could put something on Heroku and make it go live, and it was quite simple, and you didn't have to make a lot of choices. And I think that until we can get to the point where for a lot of people there's a consistent set of things that you can use really easily, and Gregor Hope talks about the floating platform. I really want it to float up quite a lot because as an application developer, I don't want to have to think about choosing particular technologies or having to do a lot of low-level configuration. And I think that we're repeating, like across the industry, we're repeating ourselves in lots of different companies. Mm-hmm. Please just make it easy.
Yeah, I love it. And I want to sort of follow up perhaps with that with another question. A challenge I've heard like several times on the booth and chatting to folks and just in my own world is convincing senior leadership to invest in training, to invest in the long term, to invest in these things. Is when I've been an individual contributor or a mid-level manager, it's quite challenging. Anyone got any tips for how to, as maybe an IC or a senior kind of individual contributor, mid-manager, how to package things up so that you can convince the execs, the leadership, to invest in building a platform or not building a platform, just doing different things with technology? And Cheryl, can I look your way first with your experience as the director of ecosystem? I always enjoyed my chats with you around that context. You saw a lot of very interesting use cases. Any advice on how to kind of like how I should sell to senior leadership? I want to invest in Kubernetes or invest in something else more.
Someone actually asked me this today as well. They said they were working at a consultancy and always having to sell to their clients. Not like, oh, we need new technology, but what is the value of it? And I'll give the same advice that I gave to them, which was when I was at CNCF, I started a group called the Business Value Subcommittee. There were a couple of people I knew who were having the same problem where it was like, we need to show what the business value is of what we do. And everybody's trying to solve the same problem. So let's get together in a group and let's publish some, guidelines about how we do it all together. So rather than give you the answer, I'm going to say, go to this group and work with this group, because actually other people have the same problems, and other people, we can come together and build solutions together. So business value, shout out for CNCF Business Value Subcommittee.
Fantastic. Sarah, have you got any thoughts? I know you deal a lot with this, and as I was reading your book as it's been created, I was learning a ton and thinking about the mental models you've used for convincing folks over the years. I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
I think you have to understand what the people that you're talking to care about. And I've very rarely spoken to anyone in technology leadership who really care deeply about the fact that you're choosing Kubernetes. What they care about is, are you expensive? They care about security, cost efficiency, ability to deliver value. And if you can't explain the stuff you're doing in the context of all of those things, and it's different in every organization, so you need to work out what's the most important thing. And one of the things that happens is, maybe your company has some kind of security incident, or you have a production incident. It's a great time to have these conversations, like never waste a good incident. You can say, look, if instead we had more consistency, we had these tools in place that support all of this, we would not have this problem. And so you're responding to people's emotional reaction to things that have happened as well.
Yeah, love it. Chris, any thoughts? I know you've got a world of experience in this space too.
Yeah, I'm really lucky and fortunate. The bank is committed to development, and personal development, right? It's a core part of the culture. And we've got a lot of time carved out in our diary every week. We've got some time on Thursdays, we've got some time on Fridays, a thing that we call Learning for the Future Hour, where, and we've had partners, people from the community come along and actually talk. And we bring people in to talk to the wider community. We've got lots of centre of practices, whether that's the AWS, the GCP, we've now started up a Platform One. There's a big commitment there. And people can attribute their time, record that back in things like Workday, and actually demonstrate the amount of learning that they're doing all the time. We've got lots of learning. It's one of the things we do, right? We're constantly doing that. So there isn't a limit for us on the learning. You're actually encouraged to do it. You're given time to do it. So it's kind of expected to do, right? We've all got to stay up to date now. But it is a personal journey. And then we run things every kind of quarter. So on our platform as a product initiative, we've started doing workshops for people that want to learn at the start of every PI. So every quarter, there's a slot there for people, We'll run it for 3 or 5 days, whatever that period's going to be. And we'll open it up for, about 25 people. Get them to come along, get them starting doing some hands-on learning for people who have done stuff, right? And just keep building that kind of thing up organically. Get people to come along, try something out. Don't be scared to fail, but just learn from what other people have done.
Yeah, love it. Fantastic. I'll open up the audience for questions in just a moment. So get thinking about if you want to ask these amazing panelists questions, please do. But as you're thinking about that, I'd love to get each of your thoughts on. Imagine someone is, a graduate or a junior in their career and is getting started in this community. And Chris, you've set this up perfectly this morning with an amazing pitch of the value. And I think all of us are dialed in to, get involved. That's what makes the real magic of the community. But what would be sort of advice to folks junior in their career to get started, to get involved with any community really, but definitely our community? Sarah, I'd love to get your thoughts. You've recently written a book, and that's the pinnacle of getting involved, right? But what's your journey been like, and what would you recommend folks do to contribute?
I've found in software development generally, people always want to share. Hillel Wayne gave a talk about different types of engineering, where he went out and spoke to people who'd been engineers in other parts of engineering, not software, and then had swapped in. So they've been chemical engineers who transferred, mechanical engineers. And he was interested to see, is it engineering, or is it one of these things where we've stolen the terminology? And asking them what was different. One of the things they said was, you don't have conferences where people share what they've been doing in the same way in these other areas. So it's there. And when I started going to conferences, I found it was amazing because, first of all, I started to realize things that we could do in our organization, but also the people who were talking about it were willing to come and talk to us in more detail. And we went from being an organization that went to conferences and thought, oh, well, that sounds interesting, to people that were talking at conferences. The other thing that Hillel picked out was apparently everyone wishes they had source control.
Nice.
Because no one else does.
Cheryl?
If you're new to this or junior to this, I would say, for me, I started out through meetups, right? A lot of free evening events where you show up. But I very quickly transitioned to public speaking at them, which sounds really scary if you are new to it, or even if you're a bit more experienced, a bit further along, you feel like, oh my God, if I get up on stage, I'm going to say something stupid and everybody's going to look at me and everybody's going to think that I'm, I don't know what I'm talking about. And yeah, people here are so friendly and so nice, and everybody wants everybody else to succeed. And by getting up on stage, it's really good for you as well in terms of your career and what you learn. And I really think it's really a valuable skill for anybody to be able to pick up and do. So I guess all the obvious stuff, but also do public speaking early. Don't feel like you have to wait 10 years before you're allowed to get up and say something. What you say is important, is valuable.
Love it. Fantastic. Chris?
So I'm going to be greedy and I'm going to give you 2 answers, right?
Oh, God.
And they're 2 stories. The first one's a personal one because it's actually about my son's journey from being a grad to getting a job. And, he had a hard time trying to get a job. The market's tough in the UK. He's a programmer, right? So he was applying and not getting much back. And his confidence was going down. And I was at the Finos conference. Paula and Kratix guys were there as well, maybe a couple of months ago. And Kevlin from the CNCF was there. And I was having a hallway chat with Kevlin. He's one of the guys that runs their education program, all the courses that they do. And he said, look, I tell a lot of people in the States, we've got fantastic courses. We've got the introduction to Linux. We've got the introduction to Kubernetes. We've got a ton of stuff that's for free. We've had 1 million people do these courses. Get your son to do those. So I went back and I chatted with him and he thought, yeah, okay, I can do that. And he went through them and he did 6 or 7. And then he got, asked to submit his CV for something, and he put on there the ones that he'd done and the ones he was going to do. And he got the job. And the guy that gave him the job was interested to the fact that he went off and he was doing those and actually said, don't do that one, do this one. So there's a ton of stuff out there, right, from the CNCF and YouTube that I talked about earlier today. Really point people to that. And then the second answer is a work one, right? Big organisation, we've got a grad scheme. We've got a grad, Tim, who's in our team, right? Fantastic guy. He's thrown himself at it, and we give him a lot of coaching, and we said, look, this backstage area, you've got an interest in that. You were doing development in your previous rotations in here. Use that. You've got an interest. Delve in, see what you can do. And he's taking ownership of that. He's done a lot of learning. He's done some great stuff, and it's brilliant to see, And again, same advice, right? There's a lot of really good stuff out there, content, whether it's CNCF, whether it's YouTube. There's a lot of people in the community producing good stuff.
Fantastic. No, I'll definitely... Oh, sorry, Cheryl.
But sometimes I think the challenge is there's too much stuff out there, right? Like, what do you spend your time on? Like, how do you find, Yeah,
so, I'm lucky because I work from home a lot. And I used to commute, and I used to watch a lot of videos when I was commuting. And actually, when I'm going into the office now, I've changed the way I commute. I use an electric bus to go in from my little village all the way to Edinburgh, because it gives me an hour for YouTube. And so I can watch things where I would normally drive that to the office, but instead I'm doing something that's a bit sustainable. It's actually cheaper taking the bus than it is driving in there. It's easier, and it gives me time to watch a couple of YouTube videos as well. And if I'm not doing that, my commute to my garden is about 30 seconds, if that, right? So I'm carving time out at the start of the day, the end of the day, or maybe even lunchtime and actually taking a break. There's too many of us feel the pressures and feel like we should eat our dinner at our desks between meetings, not carve out time for ourselves. You need a little bit of time for yourself. And it helps, actually. It can, freshen you up if you're watching a little YouTube at lunchtime.
Yeah, absolutely love it. I'll plus one to all the advice here. And definitely something I say to folks I mentor is it's never too early to speak about things, to your point, Cheryl. Like, everyone's got an interesting story. If it's like literally just the technology you've learned or the blog posts you've read about, like the best way to learn something is to teach it. I found that I'm sort of very early on in my career. That was an amazing discovery. So like when I started teaching, I started learning faster. So love that stuff. But I'd like to open up for some questions now, if that's okay.
Could I just say one more thing about that? So we often say speaking, but there are some people where that absolutely is terrifying. There are other ways to communicate. Writing,
really good point,
for example. And it's also a way to get your thoughts together. You get a lot of the same benefits. You build up a network and you communicate. I used to find that people would be like, well, I can't imagine anything worse than standing up on stage. So there are alternatives that are much less scary.
Can I come back on that as well? There's other ways to contribute as well. So one of the things I found this year was taking part in like the CNCF tag working groups, right? Or even the platform coffee chats. We ran them in Paris. You turned up in the morning, you got a coffee, and you got a croissant. You could sit and listen. You didn't have to talk. You could just listen and absorb it, right? And it's amazing the friendships that you make out of those things. The people, William's here somewhere. Oh, he'll be downstairs, People who have come over here that were at these events, right? And we all met there. We kind of make friendships, have different conversations. You see them every few weeks, and then you kind of meet up again. And, just taking part in some of those. It's not speaking. It's just having a chat.
Yeah, really good point. Thank you. No, that's really good point. I was chatting to Liz Rice just as we were waiting to come in here, and we were talking about tactics we'd used in the past, even just tagging speakers on social media saying, hey, saw these talks earlier on, they're fantastic. And it just gives you a little icebreaker then, right? So, and I take your point, Sarah, because I personally love public speaking. I've got a whole bunch of folks I mentor that that's no way, right? But I'm saying to them, get involved on social media, get involved in the blogs. I write for InfoQ, the Newsstack, there's other places, D-Zone. These are great ways to get your content out there. And D-Zone, super welcoming, InfoQ, Newsstack, a bunch of other ones. You can self-publish on some of them, put your stuff out there, get feedback. Absolutely love that. So take some questions. Anyone got a question? Put your hand up. I am taking questions, not comments, so we'll just clarify on that. We'd love a question for the panel rather than I've got a comment, an observation. So any questions for folks? These, take your opportunity. These are three amazing folks that I've learned personally so much from. Ask away. I've got some backup questions if you're all feeling a bit tired, but yes.
Hi, panel. Thank you. And there's the mention of contributing with talks and so forth. So what would you like to see from this conference in a year's time? And where do you see us as an industry going? And if a year's too short, then where do you see us in 5, 10 years' time within this space?
I'd like to see us back again next year. Yeah. I think, build on year. Last year was great. This year was even better. We've got KubeCon in London, but I would like to see us back having another KCD in Europe and keeping this momentum going, right? Because we've built up a really good community and we want to just keep that going, keep on talking about what we're doing. And it helps that it's at different times of the year as well. So, we've had something in the spring, there's something later in the year, 6 months later, where we can actually share some of those things that we learned and maybe the stories that we've adapted and, how we've taken those things and done something useful. It's the sharing I get a lot out of. I'd like to see more of that.
Don't really have a lot to add to that, to be honest.
Was the question what you wanted to see at this specific conference or just in the industry? Or? Yeah.
Hi, everyone, again. Kubernetes was 10 this year, and with that milestone, then you look at the past a lot, but I'm not seeing so much about the future. And I hear a lot about AI, but then that's just like, okay, with it, but then for me, it's that interest, and especially where are we going to go as a community? Where do we want to focus on? And like sustainability is one that we've already mentioned, but are there any other areas that you see that we're growing into?
Yeah, I was going to be like, oh, AI. It's really hard to avoid it. It feels like this is the sort of, hype moment for it. So, I'm personally a little conflicted about, whether it's going to be obviously it will be a thing in 10 years' time, perhaps just not at the hype it is now. I kind of feel like something that I'd love to see perhaps take off a little more than it has is WASM, actually. I think it was sort of hyped a little bit more and then it's kind of gone a bit quiet and now it seems to be picking up again. Just as a technology, it seems very lightweight and very, perhaps because I now work on the sort of think more about devices and edge and stuff, and it's a very good way to deploy stuff to the edge. It seems like there's something there from a technology point of view, but hasn't been discovered yet, but seems very cool to me.
I'll just add a bonus point there. For me, it's like end user stories are really valuable. The CNCF are leaning into this even more. And I say this kind of ironically because I work for a vendor these days, but as in hearing how end users, even the simpler stuff, how you're doing CI/CD, how you're thinking about your platform abstractions, are you adopting Kubernetes or are you going to WASM, serverless? Like it's really nice to have the vendors share what they're thinking and the thought leaders sharing what we're thinking, but the actual end user stories are super valuable. So if you work for an end user company, don't be afraid to submit. The CFP for KubeCon London is open now. I think it closes like at the week after KubeCon NA, so about a month's time or so. So do pop on. If you want some advice, many of us in the community are happy to look at your CFP pitch. I know personally I can offer that, so reach out. I'm sure other folks will as well. Don't be afraid to get involved, particularly if you're an end user. I would just add to that list. I'd love to see the community really galvanizing around end users over the next few years. Any more questions for folks?
Hello, everyone. So you've obviously had a successful career, and you seem to be very passionate about what you're doing. What is the skill or habit or action that has helped you most in your career to keep up with the passion and to be successful?
What is the passion?
To me or who's to me specifically? Oh, okay. Let's see. So for me, like something that I'm very passionate about is public speaking, right? I remember back in the first KubeCon that I attended, I saw Aparna Sinha, who was the director of Kubernetes at Google at that time. She did Kubernetes 1.6, like 1.6 features, like something quite mundane, quite boring. And I saw her and I was like, oh my God, that's what I want to be. Like, yeah, I really want to be her. Like, that was really the moment when I was like, okay, this is, I want to be like up on stage and give keynotes at these developer conferences. And I think it probably took me 2 years of honing my skills to get there. Like the first time I did a developer advocate. The first time that I did a video demo, I was sitting on the floor of the disabled toilets in the office I was in, because everywhere else I could hear police sirens and like traffic and whatever. So like I was just sitting on the floor of the disabled toilet because it was the only quiet spot. So I did a lot of like really like, like crappy sort of gigs, I guess, at the beginning. But I really like pushed myself on it, and I, watched videos of myself and analyzed myself a lot, because I was like, this is something that I really want to get good at. So I don't know that that's a skill or habit or whatever. People now say like, oh, you look so relaxed on stage and you look so comfortable. I'm like, yeah, because I'm relaxed on stage, but it took me a lot of time to practice to get there. So I guess if you feel like there's something that you want to do, I guess take small steps. Start. You don't have to like go from nothing to 100. Just take small steps. Keep with the practice and keep it up, and you get there.
Love it, Sarah. Chris, anything to add to that?
I think that starting to build a learning culture in the organisation I was in. I started arranging tech talks. Started inviting speakers in externally. So it really helped me to learn stuff. And as I learned more, I started to have more opinions. And I had been a senior dev for 15 years, and I just got to the point where I would be seeing a problem, and like the only way I could solve it was if I went and applied for that job. And so I went, like my career literally goes like that, and then like I got promoted several times at the Financial Times because I knew a lot more, and I would be thinking, well, if I can't trust someone else to solve this problem, I want to go and try and solve it. But it was building that network, having the opportunity to learn, got to meet a lot of people. There was always someone that I could get in touch with and say, you introduced this. How did you make it work at your company? Saved us a lot of time. And people generally are very, very welcoming. My boss at some point said, meeting free Wednesdays, but that means you can go out and meet other companies and learn from them. And I took it as a real opportunity, and I went out and spoke to lots of people. And it just really helped.
Chris?
Yeah, be curious, play, learn, right? I've been in a lot of different communities in the last 30 years as I've went through my career. I've done like traditional 3-tier apps, right? Using WebSphere. I started out doing Apache. I remember the day I compiled Apache for the first time, right? And, I came from a software development background. I'm in platforms now. And through that journey, I touched lots of different technology. They're just curious about it. Oh, I'm going to have a look at that. And that opens up other avenues. I'm a 5-why practitioner. So I'm like, why? Why is it like this? Why is it like that? Not listening to the first answer I'm getting. Challenge the boundaries, try and change things, get involved in the communities, ask questions. And yeah, just keep exploring, that's kind of what I do. I've got lots of different interests. I've got a backlog of interests that I want to get to, especially when I retire, right? I'll keep going. I might not be working or doing IT stuff, but I've still got other interests. Not all IT interests, I'm passionate about my fly fishing and passionate about going away and motorhoming and doing things like that, photography, things that are outside of IT. I've got a ton of IT stuff as well. And right now, platforms, that's the thing I'm involved in, Kubernetes. It'll probably change in 10 years' time. It's changed the last 30. But I'll still keep getting involved in community type stuff. And, whether I'm partaking, I've come to a different level now. It's been good. It's been a great journey and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So just try that. It worked for me.
Fantastic. I know we're pretty much coming to time now, so I'll wrap this up. Just to summarize for me, I've definitely heard from all the panelists here of stay curious, share all the things, and be part of the community. You're here already, right? You're a self-selecting bunch already, but get involved. I think we've all seen the more we've got involved, the more our careers have perhaps progressed. Sarah, I could recognize a similar journey for myself, as you described. I've watched Cheryl's journey and CNCF. I've known you now, Chris, for a year or so, and watched your progression and how you're feeding off the community and feeding back. So this is open to everyone, this experience, but getting involved, baby steps, taking those steps, having a rough idea of where you want to get to, perhaps some blog writing, some speaking, these kind of things. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today, right? Same kind of thing here with our learning, I think. If you want to get involved, get involved today. But please join me in thanking our amazing panelists here today for taking part. And thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge and wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.